Now in almost every app we use texts, and in some apps we use images, but it's very highly unlikely that we do not use texts in either one or more of our screens. And as you can see, there's this text subscribe which I've declared in this variable, and you might be asking, how did I achieve that? There's this widget called container, and each widget which has a parent and child relationship is what we call child, which means it accepts one instance of another widget. So we just put child, then text, and once we do this, you can then run, and once you run, that's when you see this text right here. So for us to show text on our app, we use this widget, and it's pretty simple as it is. Now let's move on to styling. Now if you want to add style to your text, you'd say style, then access this class called text style or default text style. Now the good thing about Visual Studio Code is if you hover above any class or widget, you'll see every attribute that it accepts, so you can play around with these at your own spare time and see the effect of these. Ones which are most important, which people use mostly, are font size. We are going to look at responsive texts very soon, so this is pretty important. Font size, let's just put 30 and see what it will come out. As you can see, it has changed the font size to 30. Now this blue streak just means I need to make this const. Okay, so another one is font weight. You can make it bold. Font style, you can make it italic. Letter spacing as well. Let's just play around with letter spacing. You can space the letters. Let's just see what it will do. Right, so I'll save. It keeps on going to the next line because I have default formatting. As you can see, to space the letters just a bit. If you increase to even 7, you see it will space the letters even more. Increase to maybe 17. Now this is wild. And you can see it has spaced the letters again. So there are quite a number of attributes that you can look at here, and you can play around with them, changing the color as well, changing the background color. For an in-depth tutorial on this, you can check out my other tutorial on texts. You'll find it somewhere on the screen right now, and this will help you to actually know what to do with all these attributes. Now one thing you'll see though is from all these attributes, this text does not accept a child, which means it's not a container type of widget. Container types of widget accept another widget as a child. Some even accept children, which means they accept many widgets inside of them. But this text does not accept a child, which means it does not accept any other widget as part of its hierarchy. And so what this means, you can't nest texts. So in Flutter you can't, but in React Native you can, because the tags, you can actually nest the text together. So if you have two texts that are different, say this one, then you say this one as well, then we change here, and you want to put different styles on these two texts, you'd either have to put a row and then put the two texts together, because a row accepts children, which means it accepts many widgets, or you'd have to use another widget or another style on this from this text widget, which we'll look at in a moment, and put Text.rich. Then inside we'll put text span. It's another class. This accepts a const, so this line will go away once we put any constant variables there. Then inside the text span, as you can see from the attributes, it accepts children of type class inline span, which means you can put as many of this type of children, which means text in this case, as you want. And you can also put a heading text if you want. In this case, we just want the children so that you can see how we can implement it. So we'll say children, and we'll put this tag with children, and the text span, which is this inline span, which accepts also text, which is this, my var1, and we put its own style, which is italic in this case. Then also text span, my var2, which is now, and we put its own style, which is to be bold. Then if you want to remove these, it accepts constant style cases, so you just say this. Okay, so let's now run the app and see what it will look like. As you can see, that's subscribe now. We can add font size. Then after we add font size, as you can see, that's subscribe now. So we have now managed to implement text with different styles, and you can put different colors as well, because these styles you can implement them in whichever way you want. You can put as many children and as many texts as you want. So here we've managed to implement texts with different styles. Now alternatively, we can do this. Okay, so in this case we can just change here. Instead of saying text.rich, we just say RichText. Sounds pretty much the same. Then here we just say text to define this text span as the text. Then for it to actually show, because if you just reload like this, it won't show anything. But if you want to see the result here, then you'd have to put a default style here. We just inherit the one which is already in the context for the default style. And then as you can see, there we go. Pretty much the same with text.rich. I think it's just the same thing, to be honest. But this is how we can implement texts in Flutter, and we can play around with all these attributes. You can play around with them, and you can do your homework and just tell me what you think in the comments below. But before we go anyway, now let's look at how you implement custom fonts in Flutter. Custom fonts in Flutter, you first have to put those custom fonts in your application and reference them in your pubspec file. And under the assets, you can see I put this folder called fonts. Then I put all these fonts here: Lato, bold, italic, regular. You can download fonts from Google libraries. Some have licenses, some are free. So you can download a whole bunch of fonts there that you can use for your applications. Then after I do this, I'll go to the pubspec file. Then under this section called Flutter, the Flutter section, this is where you put your assets, which are images and also fonts, which are also part of the assets. Then you can just put them there. And as you can see, I will reference them just like this, the fonts tag like that. Then you outline the family, which is Lato bold. This is the name which you will use to get the font. Then fonts here, that's the asset. Family again, then the font, which is the asset. Family, then the font. So you can just put any different name to just make sure that you can use it. But in this case, I will use them like this. Then just save and run the pubspec file. Then after it's done, we just close this, then go back to our file. So one of the attributes on the text style is font family. If you scroll, you see this one, font family. You just copy it, put it there. Then this font family is a string of the name of the family which you referenced in the pubs.spec, which is this one, Lato bold. We just put it there, then save, then run, and you see it has changed, just like that. We can do the same exact thing for the second style. Save, run. As you can see, it has changed. So we can remove this font weight well, it was already bold, so it won't really change. We can remove this italic. Then the only thing that will be different now is the font size. So as you can see, you can play around with these, then put the italic, the regular on their own and just test to see how this works. So yeah, that's done. You have implemented custom fonts in Flutter and you are now using them in your application. This is pretty simple, and I think you are now ready to continue on your journey to develop applications. So next time we'll be looking more at responsiveness of the application itself, the text and the other containers, and we'll also be looking at more things. Make sure you keep on watching and subscribe. Peace out.